I am trying to get loaded on my second computer, which will allow me to read. I can't read. I'm not allowed to do it. Did a video? Yes. There it is. Live now. Oops. Should be it. If it's not coming up. Uh, Give me a few minutes. I'm trying to get this put together for the first time ever. And I'm having a problem getting. There we go. Maybe. Well, I think there's a shadow on my face that looks like I'm a little dark. I don't know that I can do much about it. I have a light right above me. Huh. Well, I'm not getting the live feed on my other computer for some peculiar reason. All right, let's just have to go with this then, I guess. Um, Try to make it a little bit bigger so I can maybe read it. What's going on? I'm punching the wrong buttons. Well, it didn't help. Oh, let's see. We have Petsonics, Don Gallagher, Taylor. Hello. Have I gone salty? Well, no, I haven't. You're talking about the background. It just happens to be a backdrop I've got. I didn't want to show my messy office, so I put that there. Oh, Kaler. Can I keep Corey fish with a sand bottom? Seems to me I answered that question earlier today. In fact, as I recall, I had a very serious conversation with some of my Brocus cats. I have a school of about 6 very large Brocus cats. And they were rather adamant about the fact that they don't really like gravel. It knocks the enamel off their teeth. They prefer sand. And in point of fact, Corys do prefer sand. They can dig down in it better and they will find more food in it. Can you keep it with a sand bottom? Absolutely. Oh, let's see. They love a sand bottom. Yes, they do. Taylor looks great. Good. Well, thank you, Caleb. Uh, my, it looks to me like I'm in shadow, but there's probably nothing I can do about that. Thanks for the sub. All right. Okay. I have a topic in mind. What I want to talk about is the importance of anaerobics. Anaerobics get a bad reputation. I know people who claim that any anaerobics in a fish tank is like having poison in the tank. My sense is that they say that because they really don't understand at all the nature of anaerobics. Anaerobics are a type of bacteria. It's a bacteria that lives, that, that I should say, that cannot live in the presence of oxygen. So it lives in an oxygen-free environment. Now, where do you find an oxygen-free environment? Well, one place is in a uniquely foul aquarium where everything is dead and there's a glass lid on the top and it's just rank. Well, that's one place. There's another place where you find it, however, routinely, and that is below 2 inches in a sand substrate. Oxygen permeates approximately 2 inches into a sand substrate. Beyond that, oxygen doesn't permeate, and the bacteria that lives there is anaerobic. So, why is this important? It's important because anaerobic bacteria performs a very specific function in the aquarium. The function it performs is to break down waste, to break it down, not to remove it, not to hide it, not to siphon it out, but to literally break it down so that it no longer has the same components that it did when it hit there. A little known fact about anaerobics is that roots, the roots of plants, create an anaerobic environment around the root. And they do so for the very reason that they need to convert waste to material, to elements that they can absorb. Now, having said all that, let me get over here to the live chat and see where you guys are at with this. We're all meeting and greeting. Well, that's nice. We can see you. Uh, can't have substrate without anaerobic. That's exactly right. Well, you can if it's very shallow. But if it's any depth at all, then you will absolutely have anaerobics. And the anaerobics, as I said, the anaerobics are key to being able to maintain a balanced environment. Holland says that, I don't know who he's talking to, me or Lucas. Oh, talking to me, I guess. As TD Love, your shows, watched everyone. Well, thank you. It's a great joy and great fun doing these videos, and I really, but I think part of my problem with this format is going to be having to read comments. It's, but I can understand the difficulty of having 20 voices speak at once. That wouldn't help at all. So I just need to get into this and figure out. Hi, Punchy. Nice to see you here. Oh, Don Gallagher Diva. Oh, Diva. Where's Diva? Don't see. We're only 1 inch of dirt under the sand because you don't need more than that. You could do more. You could do a foot. You could do a foot of sand under. I mean, a foot of dirt under 2 feet of sand, and basically have the same result. But it would be impractical in an aquarium. So there's just the issue of practicality, having 1 inch of dirt. Now, there's another issue here that's important to understand. That 1 inch of dirt over a period of a year is pretty well used up. That is, all of the nutrients that are in it that are created by the anaerobic bacteria. If you have plants growing in there, they're absorbing that at a fairly remarkable rate, to the point that in about a year, most of the nutrients that were initially put in there have been used. They've been converted into plant material or into gases that have dissipated out of the tank. So, what do you do then? Add fertilizers? Well, no. In point of fact, the life cycle of the aquarium, which includes the food, the waste from the fish, the waste from the plants, dead leaves, and so forth, all of that disintegrates down into the substrate and replaces the nutrients that have been used up. So it cycles. There's a natural cycle that occurs. Even though the nutrients have been used up, what you've created is an environment in which new nutrients can be created. That's and the soil is uniquely effective for that. It happens in sand as well. An old sand bed becomes nutrient rich if it's deep enough. Um, Someone who has um, a gravel bed, for example, they have 2 inches of gravel in their tank, and they're having all kinds of problems. And it's a big tank, and they don't really want to have to break it down. And it's been set up for a couple of years. My recommendation is to add sand to get the whole thing up to about a 3 inch depth. And that creates an anaerobic layer because oxygen can only permeate to 2 inches through sand. It creates that layer and begins breaking down the waste that's already there. So you're cycling, even though you don't have dirt. Dirt's not critical, it's just a medium. It's a rich that you start out with that jump starts your tank. As you can see, if you've looked at some of the videos of the 55, those plants are jumping out of the tank. It's amazing. They've more than doubled. In 2 weeks, they more than doubled the stem plants. It's as though they've had just an absolute blast of fertilizers. Well, they have had some because I do use a little bit of Osmocote, but I do that because it's long lasting. It'll work in there for 6 months or so. By the end of that amount of time, the nutrients have been replaced by an active biological system. Let's get back over here to the live chat. I do hope you're writing that good question. I missed the question. Let me back up. I hope you're writing that. Let's see. Do. Artificial cube. There's Punchy. Why only 1 inch of dirt? We just did that. I'm going to go forward from there. Oh, hello, Mr. Fish. Hello, Derek. Derek. Yeah. I think I know Derek. Some of my shop customers are have been following the videos, and they're coming into the shop, and we're having a good time with it. And I'm seeing one or two here online tonight. How many people are here? I've lost. I don't see 20, 29, 29. Let's see. Somebody misspelled hi. Calling Thursday for some of your mix for a 30 long. Yeah, I'm putting together. We're using my Facebook page as a an ordering form, so we got to get something going pretty quick. I've got people looking to buy materials, so I'll be bagging up the. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bag up the additives, and then I'll give you a formula for what to add the additives to in order to create. It's just basic topsoil. Doesn't have to be anything complicated, but I'll have that in the notes that'll come along with the additives. I deleted my question because misspellings, Father Fish. You should be able to click on it and see it, or should about the formation of hydrogen sulfide gas. Hmm. Well, it dissipates. So about the best answer I have for that. That there are dangerous gases that are created in an anaerobic environment. When they bubble up through the substrate, they don't hang around in the water column. They pop up above it and they dissipate. They're gone. They disappear. Um, Hydrogen is probably the most common one, although that's not toxic. Uh, Toxic gases disappear. I've never had a tank crash uh, from apparent toxic gas. I have to go my downstream. Okay, well, I was afraid I'd be stepping on somebody tonight. I don't. I haven't been around enough to know, what the proper protocols all are here, and I just wanted to get online for an hour or so to really get a feel for this and see if I can't, make it work. Let's see. Data Fish is on at 9, and it's just about 9 now. I don't know me. You're from Wales, Derek. Different Derek. Okay, from Wales. That I've been impressed my entire life with the quality of fish keeping in Great Britain. The Brits have a just a remarkable um, uh, perseverance and persistence and a sense of quality about fish keeping. There are a few really very fine fish keepers on YouTube these days. I follow a couple of them. I'm just deeply impressed with these guys. They really know their stuff, and they operate out of a sense of experience and not uh, wives' tales. That's the way I can put it. Okay, we're gonna lose a bunch of people here, I guess. Do I use dirt in my cichlid tanks? No, I don't. That is to say, I don't use dirt in tanks that are going to be dug up because it'll just create a mess. Although what I have noticed is that when I have fish digging in a dirted tank, they only dig in a very local area, and it doesn't really seem to create much of a problem. I mean, if they were turning over the whole tank, like some cichlids seem to want to do when they're nesting, that could create a problem. But I really haven't noticed one. It's relatively minor. But as a matter of course, I do not put dirt in in tanks that I'm going to have uh, digging fish in. I was going to say big fish, but that's not true. There are a lot of big fish, like in my 500 gallon, that really don't stir the bottom up at all. So a dirted bottom works just fine for them. And in point of fact, they don't much bother the plants, things like catfish, the red-tailed cats, and some of the other big shovel nose, the clown knives, those kinds of things. They don't bother the substrate, and they don't bother plants. Um, it's interesting that you really can have a fairly delicate environment with some of these real monsters. Cichlids, some cichlids like this, the Central Americans, they're another matter. They're really pretty raucous in the tank, but afraid to do a dirted tank. But after watching a video, it's going to do a 55 for swordtails. Great plan. That'd be a perfect tank for them, and they'll love it. Uh, the dirted tanks are perfect for live bearers, bread and butter fish, tetras, anything that's really not doing much to stir the bottom and that appreciates living in an environment with lots of plants and lots of microscopic food. And that's one of the real benefits of having a balanced tank. It's creating food for the fish. It's creating a whole microscopic environment, a microscopic community that not just baby fish, but a lot of these little guys will feed on that's too tiny for us to really be able to see and appreciate, but that forms a really vital part of their diet. It's one of the things that people who like mulm appreciate. Well, mulm, the culture, the microscopic culture, doesn't disappear in a deep sand bed. You don't have to have mulm. Really, the sand takes the place of it, and the things that are laying on the bottom for a short time are able to host all of those microscopics, and they'll keep little fish alive really indefinitely. If you set it up right and give it a little time to stabilize, you can not feed those fish at all. And the aquarium will provide adequate food for them, something that there really aren't many people doing, but it's really true. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you, JH. I appreciate being here. What about plecos? I have two comments, a chocolate and a chocolate albino, super red. The super reds are nice. I just got a couple of them to one of my customers who's a good breeder. Try to get a bunch of them going. Where do you get your sand? Let me get back up first of all. The plecos. The only issue I found with plecos is they like to eat plants. So I try to keep spinach and other green leafy things in there, wafers, spirulina wafers. Try to keep a food supply for them. Driftwood's a really important part of that. A lot of the L series really need driftwood. I have a huge collection of driftwood in my shop. Um, Other than that, they don't dig, um, and they do a good job with the glass. I never have algae growing on my glass if I have plecos. Where do I wet my sand? I'm working on varieties of sand. I have been using swimming pool filter sand. It's bagged, it's easily accessible, it's available, it's washed, it's pretty clean. It's a little pricey, but not too bad. It works just fine. It's just the right consistency. Laws here in Florida preclude being able to take sand off the beach. So I really haven't done that. But and I'm not living near a creek or a stream that has sand, although I'm gonna look for some. I think Curry Creek behind me has a pretty good sand bed. I've been told it is. I want to get that and try it. And I'm also gonna get some of the mud from there, see if we can't get a natural tank started. That's one of the things I want to do in some upcoming videos is actually create a tank, create an aquarium in the wild from material in the wild, and watch that grow. Loving this time to put a kiddos to bed. By all means, Jeffrey, nice to have you here. Amateur Aquatic says hello. I have leaf litter tanks. So I love leaf litter tanks. I had a leaf litter tank many years ago, and put a bulb in it. I don't remember what kind it was anymore. Vivitas, I think. It was a 29-gallon tank. I had oak leaf litter, and that plant took over the tank. It was so big and so thick and so beautiful. It was just really impressive. And as I recall, the fish loved it too. Yeah, leaf litter, leaf mulm is fabulous. Um, and it almost doesn't matter what kind. There are a few toxics, but they're once they dry out, they're really not an issue. Just don't put green leaves in your tank. Put dry leaves in. The super way to build up Malman, to build up the richness of your aquarium. Beach sand has not worked well for me. Yeah, I tend to agree. But what I've said over the years about beach sand is that it contains calcium, and calcium will crust over. I've experienced that with my saltwater tanks, with using crushed coral, for example. It has a tendency to crust the surface, which prevents water flow. Um, Beach sand, for my money, has got to have a lot of calcium in it. Although, thinking about it the other night, I came to the startling conclusion that the sand that that is mined out here in the middle of Florida is ancient beach sand, if you will. So I don't know, but the few times I've used beach sand, it's been with only moderate success. I do agree that river sand, creek sand, any sand that comes out of flowing water, particularly flowing fresh water, is going to be perfect and should be used by all means. In fact, what I would do is dig down a little deeper and get some of that rich compost out of there. Use that as the foundation for your tank. That will that'll again bring natural nutrients in, as well as all of the biology that's so important to creating a balanced environment. Can my wood be collected from river, be used in an aquarium? Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the best way to get wood. You want wood that's obviously been in there for a long period of time. And you don't want anything that's green and that's going to leach out. Um, but old river wood, old creek wood is absolutely perfect. It's already leached out, it's washed clean, and it's really perfect. Make sure you're using hardwood, not softwood. And the difference is obvious. Softwood kind of disintegrates. You can break it up with your hand virtually. Hardwood is like rock, it's hard, but it's perfect. Beat stands out. Yeah, got that. Club's Java Moss and Sword Tank. So you'll see the baby's eating pigs, can't see. That's exactly right. A little microscope is a lot of fun. I've got a couple of them that I use, and it gives me an understanding of what really is living in my aquarium, and it ain't just the fish and the plants by a long shot. Can any wood collected from the river be used? Well, again, yes, with the caveat that you want wood that's well worn, that has all the tannins leached out. Otherwise, your water's going to turn brown, which isn't a bad thing, um, but it's a little unsightly. Lives in Arizona, have a lot of dry wash beds. I would think so. Um, Try it and see, but it seems to me that those are some really high quality woods. They've been bleached out by the sun. They've been washed out by flash floods, by streams, creeks, rainwater. They should be absolutely perfect. I would go for it. Um, I think I think you might bag it up and send me some. That sounds perfect to me. Loving your content. This is against the flow. Oh boy, I love you. I love your channel name, Against the Flow. I hear that. We did the Java loss. Any wood? Uh, got driftwood rocks. They're not too bad on our plants we have. That's good. Yeah, rocks are another thing that just had so much character to a thing. And there are a lot of plants that'll grow on the rocks. Live in Arizona, we did that. That was Don Gallagher. Thank you, Don. Utilizing natural sunlight instead of fabricated light sources is interesting. You betcha. This is, I can read, natural baggy lean. Have you experimented with this? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, um, my most recent video about natural aquariums talked about my grandmother's fish tank. And all of the early aquariums, they were lit before there was electric lighting, even, were being lit by sunlight. When I can achieve that, I find that the tank is always much, much healthier. Sunlight is a quality of light that cannot be equaled, I think, by synthetic light, by light bulbs, light fixtures, and so forth. We can't provide enough, and we can't really provide the right spectrum. So, yeah, whenever you can do direct sunlight, not daylight, but direct sunlight, sunlight actually coming into the tank. If you start getting algae, add more plants. Uh, if you need to put a little drape in the back of it to kind of control the light a little, then do so. You will find that if you can if you can use natural sunlight, it's going to give you a really beautiful, beautiful aquarium experience. Utilizing natural sunlight, we just did that. I'm keeping up with this pretty good. I guess you guys have slowed down for my benefit. Let's see. Uh, Depending where you live, pan it for gold first. Nice. Nicely. I love it. Um, Although it would be fun to find gold in your aquarium, wouldn't it? God, you could pan your aquarium dirt. That would be a fun thing to do with guests, wouldn't it? Find gold in your aquarium. A few of my tanks get direct sunlight. Yeah, you bet. It's really wonderful. Talking about the sand from the sand from the dry wash. Yeah, sure. I don't see why not. I would imagine desert sand would be fine. It does have nutrients in it. Um, you, but probably they're washed through enough that it would not be an issue. Yeah, I would think so. And again, that's beach sand. Um, it's actually rocks that have been ground down. So yeah, any kind of sand. I think any sand. I really want to get into trying a greater variety of sands. I think there's a lot more that we could be doing with sand. Driftwood rocks. Where are we? Few of my tanks in. I'll give us that. I'm. Gee, we pushed all the way to the bottom here. What do we have? We have 24 people. Well, so you're jumping back in. New to fish keeping. This is amateur aquatics. Hence the name. I've started breeding white clouds, platies, guppies. What would be a good fish to breed next? Man, you're hitting it right. If you learn to breed um, any of the egg layers, and white clouds are a perfect one because they're so easy. Zebras are as well. It opens your experience and opens your skills to being able to do a lot of pretty sophisticated things. Learning how to learning how to handle eggs, uh, how to keep them alive, keep them healthy, and how to feed the babies just gets you light years ahead of most hobbyists. I have a cockatoo, a bear eye in the background who's wanting to be part of the conversation. I'd be interested in video on lighting for planted tanks, also dry foods. I've had a number of requests about lighting. Um, I will do that. My sense is that it doesn't matter a whole lot what the lighting is. If it's a low light fixture, then I just leave it on. I've got tanks with lights on them that are never turned off. I mean, they're on for years at a time, and the aquarium adapts, and I don't get an algae buildup. What I get is really great plant growth. Beautiful piece of driftwood collected from a wash, said Don Gallagher. Puma tanks is around sunlight. New to fish caping, we did amateur aquatics. A little more about that. Next fish for you to use to breed. You need to do angels simply because they're just so fascinating. They're easy to do. And that moves you in the direction of some of the larger cichlids. Um, Obviously, mouth brooders, you haven't done any of that yet. You want to learn about that. The Africans, or um, there, there are a few um, cichlids, South American cichlids, that are also mouth brooders. They're real interesting, and that's kind of a unique experience. I would say you're on your way. Start looking for more exotic stuff. Once you feel like you've really got a handle on breeding egg layers, then get into some of the fancier stuff, some of the more exotic things. Um, you'll find a good market for them too if you're able to raise the babies, and that's always the key is raising the babies. We'll do more and more things on food as we move along. I rather expect there's some pretty good people on here talking about food for babies. What do you sunlight? Get an explosion of algae. If you're getting an algae explosion, there are a couple of issues. Number one, your substrate is probably not deep enough. So you're getting too much nutrient in the water column rather than down in the substrate where the roots of the plants will take advantage of it. Um, and the other solution is add more plants. If you don't like the plants you got, put plants in that are better. But get your substrate deeper too. That's going to help immeasurably. If we can't get deep well water, what do you recommend? Hot. If you can't get deep well water, well, the bottom line about water is your fish need to live in your water, whatever it is, they need to live in it. So you do what you have to do to adapt them to it so that you don't have to be recreating water all the time. I know there are professional breeders, guys who work very seriously with fish who are required by virtue of what they're trying to do to alter the water parameters for the fish they're trying to breed. But for a hobbyist, it's really more important for your fish to learn to live in your water. Now, there's a caveat. That is, you want your water to be healthy water. You don't want water that has dropped the pH down to 5.0 because you don't have any carbonates in it to maintain a stable pH. So you can do that. You can add carbonates if you need to. You can add salt if you need to. Baking soda, even. Um, we have rock down here in this part of Florida that's fossilized coral, and we can break that up and put it in the tank, and that'll work pretty well too. It tends to film over and stop dissolving much into the tank, but you can find some things to add to the aquarium that will provide more carbonates and more hardness to the water. Basically, you want to keep your water fairly hard and keep your pH fairly high. If it's dropping down low, then you really need to add some carbonates to it to at least give it some stability. That's one of the problems with using reverse osmosis water, spring water, rainwater, any of those kinds of waters. Biological activity will cause the pH to drop precipitously to the point where you'll wind up with a pH of 6.0 pretty quickly, which is fine for the fish that are in the tank, but you start trying to introduce new fish and it kills them. They can't survive it. And it takes days to acclimate a fish to that kind of environment. It's just not worth the hassle and aggravation. Baking soda can be your friend, and it salts, it stays in there pretty well. You may have to play with it a bit if you've got a real issue, but deep well water really is the key. Most places have deep well water, and most deep well water artesian, so-called artesian water, is hard and alkaline. You shouldn't have a problem if you have it available. When to use sunlight on my tanks every time I get an explosion of algae. We talked about that. Make sure to subscribe and ding the notification. Thank you, not Lahana Fish Rich. I appreciate that very much. We hit 500 last night. Pretty exciting stuff. Looking for the next 500. I did create a Patreon um, webpage today. Don't know what it is, don't know how to use it, but I've got one and you can find it. Maybe somebody can help me figure out what to do with it now that I have it. Don Gallagher, please, in your infinite wisdom, tell me how to keep severums with live plants. I have 4 severums and tetras in 125. They eat them all. That's interesting. Um, Feed spinach. I mean, really. If they're eating the plants, you could try a harder leaf plant like Amazon swords or Java. Uh, but if you will give them more vegetable matter, real live vegetable matter, not powder, not not some kind of dry food, but put lettuce in there, put cabbage in there, put zucchini in. For those of you who are doing plecos, put potato in. Potato sinks to the bottom. They love it. It's perfect. Uh, Vegetables are your friend, and they're your fish's friend. They're good for people and good for fish. Feed your animals more vegetables, and they'll love you for it. We think about feeding protein all the time, and that's important and it's helpful and it's fun to do. But by golly, they need vegetables as well. Most fish that are grazers, um, not fish that survive strictly on eating other fish, but omnivores, the greatest percentage of their diet is vegetable matter. So, work on that. Putting vegetables in. The other benefit of vegetables in the tank is that they don't foul the water. They'll disintegrate slowly if you have uh, snails or any other kind of grazing fish, any of the catfish or plecos. They're going to take care of that. The more it deteriorates, the more they love it. Put vegetables in your tank. Oh, try that with a severum. See if that helps. Read a book by John Dawes. Says when keeping fish, more important to master keeping good water rather than the fish. Yeah, sure do. Uh, it's an interesting issue. Good water doesn't mean always new water. Some of the people who I know who are old time fish keepers never do water changes. I've got tanks here where I never do a water change. I mean, maybe once in years, I may do a partial water change on a tank that's been set up for 5 years. And I do it to make me feel good, not necessarily because the tank needs it. But good water quality means that it's that there's an environment living in that water that's thriving. That's good water quality. You can't always tell by looking at the water, but you can tell by looking at what's going on in the water. That tells you what the quality of the water is. So, yeah, I agree. I'm not sure how you would evaluate it otherwise, because looking strictly at parameters doesn't tell the whole story. Do you perp the vegetables? Do I prep the vegetables? You can blanch them, but you don't need to. They deteriorating naturally uh, creates a food source for the fish. They eat things that are deteriorating, whether it's other fish or plants or whatever it is. So prep is not critical. Have you worked with gastromyzon species? Don't know. Tell me what gastromyzon species are. I'm not good. I'm not good with the Latin. Gastro is stomach, myzon, um, something that eats something. What are some examples of gastromyzon species? Do I prep the vegetables or raw? Raw is fine. You can prep. It just advances the deterioration a little more. Uh, Alonso says, "Thanks, Master." Here we go. I want to start a South American tank, but I don't have an RO system. Count your blessings. So I'm afraid about hardness because I've always used tap water with no problem. Well, well, you don't need RO. You don't even want RO. RO water, spring water, rainwater, soft water tend to cause more problems than help because they cannot hold a stable pH. And the water tends to become more and more acidic, which is fine in certain respects, but in others, as in being able to add new fish, most of the fish that you buy are coming out of hard alkaline water, and they're not going to be happy being thrown into soft acid water. In point of fact, don't mean to be overly graphic about this, but if you take a fish out of 8.0 hard alkaline water with a DH of 250 and you throw it into an RO system with a pH of 6, the, the, the osmotic pressure on that fish's cells will cause the liquid in the cell to expand to the point where the cell wall will burst. Can you imagine a more horrible death? That's what causes fish to spin out. They're being murdered from within by soft acid water. Don't use RO water. It's great and it's important in a saltwater tank because it controls the amount of hardness that's going in. In saltwater, you have the opposite problem. The water is always so hard, you can wind up with a Dead Sea if you keep adding minerals to it, which you would do if you're topping off for evaporation with hard alkaline water, because the minerals don't evaporate, just the H2O, and you wind up with the water becoming harder and harder and harder. So that's the justification for doing water changes. But the reality is the plants are going to take up excess minerals. So it's really not going to be so much of an issue. Couldn't fit it all in the question. Tried high veggie diet to cucumber, zucchini. They still nibble at the plants or pull them up and carry them around. You've got brats. Yeah, I know it's true. There's some there's some fish that will not tolerate plants. Um, Try floating plants. Plants that it won't matter if they get chewed up, um, and they'll still be able to do the job that plants do. Anacharis is a good example of hornwort stuff. The duckweed, you know, stuff that they can tear up and they can't. They're not going to really injure its ability to continue balancing the tank. If you're doing water change with a Husker tank or just top ups, smash up with the sand substrate and dirt under, lots of plants and red oak leaves. Keep an eye on the pH, and just keep an eye on the water. If he's healthy and moving around, topping off is fine. Um, you could do sparing water changes, like maybe every 6 months. Give it, let it rain on your tank. Do about like or 10% a month. Do small water changes on a regular basis. Uh, Big ones tend to, to create more problems. You can dramatically change the water parameters with a big water change, and that can be risky. Small is better, 5%, 10%. I rarely recommend more than a 10% water change. Uh, I'm fond of saying I don't do a lot of water changes. And the truth is, with some of my standalone tanks, I don't. But most of my systems are open systems, and they get a lot of water changes because they get a lot of new water coming in. Water's going out and coming in all the time. I don't think there are any hard and fast rules. You want to keep it healthy. Just try to get a sense of the health of the tank, and that'll be reflected in the way the plants are growing and the way they look, the way the fish are acting. If everybody's happy, you probably don't have any problems. It's when they're not happy that you need to figure out what to do about it. Spoke a little about bigger fish that are easy on substrate. Recommend for a 75-gallon. Golly, whatever you like. Um, one of the, I've got larger tanks that have a lot of kind of mid-sized cichlids, uh, African like Malawis and Central Americans, all kind of living together. Then I've got other tanks that have dwarf cichlids, angels, discus, rams, um, those kinds of things, the earth eaters. It depends what you like. Just try to keep fish together that cohabit nicely. Keep gentle fish with gentle fish and rough fish with rough fish. If you got rough fish, get another one. Just keep adding them to them, and the aggression will stop because there'll be too many fish in the tank. They'll get mixed up about who they're angry with. LRB Aquatics talking about RO water. I felt so. Thanks for explaining what it is. Yeah, I haven't talked to Lucas about RO and what he's doing with his water. I just don't know. I'm sure, having seen his tanks, that he's certainly got a handle on his water parameters. He doesn't use deep sand beds. I'm going to keep encouraging him to do that because I think he'll love it. But he has beautifully balanced tanks with very little mechanical device. The way he does that is he keeps the amount of the fish down. So he's got um, not a whole lot of pressure on that water column, which gives everything a chance to kind of stabilize and get healthy and happy. Beautiful tanks, simple tanks, basic tanks. And occasionally you'll see a certain species of plant will just erupt in the tank. It'll it'll kind of hit its stride and just really take off. It's a beautiful thing to see. And he's got some tanks that have a lot of fish in them because they bred in there and spawned in there. The tank has been able to maintain its balance with that increase in species or in plants, whatever. Blanch zucchini works fine. Prepping zucchini or potatoes or whatever, you're just you're giving the fish a little head start on their food. It's like people; they prefer soft to hard. Um, yeah, RO water is simply like spring water, rainwater. It's water that has no minerals in it. Abbreviation, telephone. Have a South American tank, the fish should thrive in 7-8 pH. Remember, the fish are not coming from the Amazon. You betcha, Don. That's really true. I remember some years ago, I sold a beautiful collection of angelfish to a woman up in Pennsylvania. They were magnificent. They all came off of Florida farms. I mean, there was some amazing stuff in there. Probably $500 worth of fish. Shipped them up to her, and she insisted on putting them in soft acid water. Insisted that that was their natural habitat. We had the breeder calling her, talking to her about it. I spent hours on the phone with her. Could not break through to this woman that she wasn't doing her fish any favors. She wound up losing them all. They literally bled to death based on what I described a little earlier about osmotic pressure. Yeah, fish that have been bred in captivity for generations are used to a different environment than is the case in the wild. And angels are a perfect example. Even fish like discus now are being bred and the babies raised in hard alkaline water. Unheard of 20 years ago. But it's happening because that's the water they're living in. Fish do adapt. They adapt well and pretty easily. How many gallons of water and all do I have? I don't know. Um, Probably 3 to 4 thousand gallons. I don't think it's more than that. It's not a lot. It seems like a lot. I've got maybe 10 big tanks, a couple of 500s, 300s, like that, and a lot of little tanks. Uh, Start adding some hornwort. Yeah, that's going to probably be the solution. Tried your suggestion of feeding ground chicken. The fish loved it. They almost seemed calmer afterwards. Yeah, although keep in mind that a hungry fish is a healthy fish. It's natural and normal for a fish to be hungry. I like the chicken. I think that you got to be a little careful with it. It's like any other kind of meat, and chicken especially has a tendency to foul pretty quickly. If it's laying in the tank, it's going to be a mess, and if it's there overnight, it could foul the water. Unless you got a really seasoned, well balanced tank, you could create a problem for yourself. So, any kind of live food like chicken that you feed it sparingly. Make sure it all gets eaten, and then don't feed it every day. Feed it maybe once a week because the fish are gonna poop it out, and it'll still have a lot of food value. So they or some other fish are gonna eat it again. That food will go through a half a dozen different guts before it's finally used its food value used up. Okay, we're doing well here. We're down to 22 hearty souls. Thank you so much. And we are an hour in. So I'm going to sign off. This has been great fun. We've done an hour. We've had a good time. I think I've gotten most everything. There were a few things I think I missed, but I can't find them. If you got something, I'm right at the bottom. If there's something I've missed that you'd like me to talk about, key it in right now, and we'll see if we can't deal with you. But so far, everything I've seen, I think I've dealt with. I'm pleased about that. I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to keep up with the text. Um, I'm not happy about the framing or the lighting. So there's some things I need to work on. And I do need a better background. The saltwater background is probably not appropriate. Weather loaches, how to breed them. Never bred them. A lot of litter. Um, they're burrowers. They're gonna breed in litter. They're gonna scatter their eggs. I would try to have a lot of leaf litter on the bottom for loaches. I much enjoyed sharing your wisdom. Well, thank you very much. Madfish Diva, I appreciate your channel. Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to be able to talk with y'all. We'll do this again real soon, maybe over the weekend. And I'll try to get a better sense of not stepping on other people's toes and getting the word out a little better so that you'll know I'm coming when I'm coming around the mountain. Thank you all. Bless you. Good night.